Good morning, and welcome to the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor for the 81st legislative session. Before we begin, please be sure to mute your microphone when you're not speaking to minimize background noise. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Hardy,
Here.
Senator Lang,
Here.
Senator Neal,
Here, sorry.
that's all right. Senator Pickard,
Here.
Senator Scheibel,
Here.
Senator Settlemeyer,
Here.
Chair Spearman.
I am here. Okay, thank you. I think we have everyone here. No one's missing. So today we have a hearing on Senate Bill 209, 231, and 245. A couple of housekeeping items. I would like to take a moment to go over some basic housekeeping items. As you know, the legislative building is currently closed as a public safety measure to reduce the spread and infection rate of COVID-19 to the public. And so, all committee meetings will be held virtually, meaning committee members, staff, and everyone else will participate either through Zoom, video conference, or by telephone. However, there are various ways members of the public can engage with us and participate throughout the process. These include registering to participate through Nellis, where you have the opportunity to testify on a bill or provide public comment during the meeting. Submit written comment to the committee email address or fax number listed on the agenda. You may share your opinion via the legislature's opinion application on Nellis or by viewing committee meetings online through Nellis or on the legislature's YouTube channel. To register on Nellis, simply click the Participate button near the committee meeting date and time. Then fill in the required information such as your name, the agenda item you're interested in, and your position on the bill. Once your registration is submitted, you will see a confirmation screen and you will also receive an email with the phone number and meeting ID to call at the time of the meeting. Just to note that while meeting registration is required to participate, it does not guarantee you will be able to speak. Similar to previous sessions, comment and public comment may be limited due to time constraints. I will announce the time frame, that's how many minutes for each response, for, against, and neutral. It will be helpful that if more than one person in your organization wishes to comment, to remember that ditto is a good response when someone has already covered your points. This will allow more people to comment during the time frame. When you're on the phone line, please pay attention to which bill is being considered and follow the verbal prompts provided by the BPS staff so that you know which keys to press and raise your hand or unmute yourself. Staff will call on you to speak by the last 3 digits of your phone number. Detailed instructions for participating in committee meetings are also available on the Help page, which is linked in the banner at the top of every page on Nellis. If you need assistance with any of these processes, or if you would like to receive electronic notification of the committee's agendas and meetings, please contact our committee staff at the email listed on the agenda. Any exhibits for the committee must be submitted in electronic format no later than 8:00 a.m. the day before the meeting to our committee staff. Contact information may be found on the committee page in Nellis. In addition, any person proposing an amendment to a bill being heard by this committee must first talk to the sponsor and let them know that you intend to submit an amendment. I will not entertain any amendments if the bill sponsor is not aware of the amendment. The proposed amendment must be submitted in writing 24 hours prior to the meeting. Please include the bill number, a statement of intent, and your contact information. When testifying, please remember to unmute your microphone and clearly state your name and the entity you represent at the beginning of your testimony. Speak clearly and project your voice. To ensure those watching can hear your testimony, and understand what you're saying. Please remember to turn the microphone off when you finish speaking. A reminder to all those who testify pursuant to Nevada Revised Statutes 218E.085, it is unlawful for a person to knowingly misrepresent facts when testifying before a legislative committee. A person who knowingly does so is guilty of a misdemeanor. The chair and members may request any testifier to submit documentation supporting their testimony. To committee members, during these virtual meetings, when an agenda item is called for a vote, our committee will be using a roll call to do so. When the committee secretary calls your name, please answer with yes or no so that there is no confusion. Also, if you have a question, please raise your hand through the Zoom application. And finally, all exhibits received prior to the meeting will be available on Nellis online. And so this morning, we will begin with hearing on Senate Bill 209. Good morning, Senator Donate. Begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Spearman, and good morning to the Senate Committee on Commerce and Labor. For the record, my name is Fabian Donate, and I represent Senate District 10 in the heart of Las Vegas. I come before you today to speak on Senate Bill 209, which would allow private employees the opportunity to gain leave for their COVID-19 vaccine. As many of you know, my background stems in the field of public health. When I was in the early process of determining what legislative bills I wanted to bring forward, I knew that I had to make some sort of change to how this pandemic was being handled. To me, as a proud son of a casino worker and a grocery store worker, expanding worker protections and helping my home state in its recovery was my top priority. With that, let's go ahead and proceed to the presentation. Today, I want to speak to you all about the lessons that we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and my strategy to get vaccines mobilized to our most vulnerable communities. I will quickly go over some of the background on the legislation that has been passed, the limitations of our public health response, and how my proposed amendment will fix many of the issues that we'll see moving forward. SB 209 is an act that relates to employment, and it requires an employer in the private sector to allow their employees to take paid leave for their COVID-19 vaccine. 4 hours will be allocated to each employee for this process, which will be given to them for about 2 hours each segment of paid leave to get the vaccine. Additionally, SB 209 requires the Interim Committee on Healthcare to conduct a study on the long-term implications of the COVID-19 pandemic. In past legislation, it has been documented that Nevada workers deserve access to paid leave. Legislators paved the way for this moment back in 2019 by passing SB 312, which would require that private employers with 50 or more employees in Nevada to provide each employee with at least 40 hours of paid leave. This provision changed some of the reporting and documentation requirements for employers, and it allowed private employees with the opportunity to gain 5 days of paid leave away from their responsibilities. There is not much differentiation for what this paid leave can be used for, but it moved the needle on the conversation on worker protections. Of course, as we have learned during this pandemic, there's a limitation with the enumeration of paid leave days that is earned by employees and how that impacts workers who live paycheck to paycheck. For instance, CDC requirements established by the COVID-19 inform us that patients who test positive for this virus at minimum should quarantine for at least 10 days. But if you do not have the means to quarantine or to stop working temporarily, it reduces our entire strategy for how we limit disease transmission. When you are living in a situation that forces you to choose between your own health and working endless hours to provide a roof over your head, it's easy to assume why some workers might be inclined to underreport their prevailing symptoms. And in this case, not having the means to pay for your bills might jeopardize the health and safety of your coworkers simply by the absence of paid leave to prioritize your own well-being. Some major employers have responded differently to how they approach a worker who has tested positive for COVID-19. And in fact, many of them do provide paid leave for an employee's quarantine absence. However, we must recognize that not all employers follow the same internal regulations, and that differences do occur between some workers and others. This applies to the same way for PPE protections and why we're seeing disparities with those who have been adequately protected and those who have not. We can see this easily between the protections granted to my father as a casino worker and to those protections not given to my mother as a grocery store worker. Therefore, this is why in public health we recognize that vaccine distribution is a racial justice issue. Communities of color are more likely to work on the front lines of this pandemic, making them more susceptible to contracting this illness. To help establish the right conversation on getting vaccines to all individuals, we need to recognize that disparities exist between occupations that have access to this luxury and those who do not. When community members ask me about my perception of the pandemic and how Nevada has responded, I try to maintain my optimism while recognizing how poorly our state has done to invest in this field. Nevada's poor public health system is not a new topic. My professors and colleagues have attested to this for years. I would even argue that a system collapse was inevitable, and that is exactly what we have seen throughout this pandemic. For me, I have grown up in a state that has always done poorly in education and public health. As a young teenager, I remember Nevada always ranking last for any study or outcome. Even to this day, Nevada continues to rank lowest among other states in public health policies and in statistics. For instance, a report conducted in 2019 by the Commonwealth Fund shows that Nevada ranked close to last for healthcare in many categories compared to the rest of the country. The study showed that Nevada ranks 48th in the nation for health system performance, and we rank last for access to and affordability to healthcare. A similar study conducted by the Trust for America's Health found that Nevada ranked last in the country for public health funding, around $50 per person in state dollars dedicated to public health. That's about 5 times less than what Alaska invests in public health, which is around $289 per person. Also, we rank last in the country for primary care providers and even for some small stuff like flu vaccine distribution. When we talk about COVID-19 and how our state has responded, we must address our weaknesses head on. And that means acknowledging that our state has done a terrible job to prioritize public health. If you ask public health professionals around the country some of the biggest concerns or lessons that we have learned from this pandemic, these are some of the few. We know the consequences that arise whenever a government system disinvests or takes away funding in public health. A lack of public health infrastructure limits our ability to support an emergency response. And similarly, we have seen the correlation between educational gaps and health literacy to understand simple directions given to protect the health of all individuals. Vaccine hesitancy and not wearing a mask over your nose are examples of poor health literacy. And finally, community of color are more hard-hit populations across the entire country when it comes to healthcare outcomes and the pandemic. When we talk about COVID-19 distribution and characteristics, we're already starting to see the limitations that exist within communities of color and barriers that stand in their way. This is a data table that was distributed on March 10th, 2021 by the Southern Nevada Health District regarding vaccine distribution. It's not surprising to me just how poorly we've done to vaccinate those who are most vulnerable, like our Black, Latinx, and Black workers. And in fact, we see this play easily by looking at the vaccine distribution map by zip codes throughout the state. In Clark County, it is not surprising for me to see a higher density of vaccines administered in areas like Summerlin and Henderson, whereas East Las Vegas and North Las Vegas suburbs are trailing behind where most minority populations reside. COVID-19 showed us the limitations and consequences of an underfunded statewide public health system, but it also allowed us to visualize the wide number of opportunities that still lie ahead for our state. To move beyond this pandemic, we must analyze and assess the public health frameworks that have been set for an emergency, whether it's responding to the COVID-19 pandemic or even coordinating a response to an event similar to the Route 91 Harvest Festival. We need to support public health across all levels and stages. This means supporting epidemiological surveillance to prevent the outbreak of diseases, investing in public health programs, mobilizing marginalized communities to get vaccinated, and passing public health policies like SB 209 that can prevent this from happening ever again. My proposed amendment revises the paid leave regulation that was passed in 2019 and temporarily allows employees to gain an additional leave for their COVID-19 vaccine. It requires major employers with 50 employees and above to allocate an additional 4 hours of paid leave to receive their COVID-19 vaccine. These 4 hours will not be counted as a previously allocated 40-hour count, and they will expire 2 years after it is enacted. Additionally, my proposed amendment changes the requirements that will be reported as part of the study conducted by the Interim Healthcare Committee. My hope is that we can begin to address the conversation of where we went wrong, how we can improve, and changes that must be made to address the long-term impacts of this pandemic on frontline and essential workers. We have to have a transparent conversation on the economic devastation that has occurred and reflect on how state and local governments can respond to the future emergencies. Nevada has a long way to fix the gaps observed. We can start by making sure that everyone has access to receive the COVID-19 vaccine. With that, I am ready to answer any of the questions from the committee members on the proposed amendment.
Thank you, Senator Donate. Very thorough, very thorough. Committee members, any questions? I see reliably Senator Pickard and Senator Settlemeyer. Senator Pickard first, and then I'll take Vice Chair Neal after Senator Settlemeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Senator Donate, for bringing the bill. I just have one question, and that's, let me phrase it this way. Does this bill require employers to pay any accrued wages on departure of the employee to the exclusion of the common use it or lose it policy that many employers currently have in place?
Thank you, Senator Pickard. Fabian Donati for the record. My understanding is that this policy follows a lot of the same, the template that was done in 2019. It is separate leave. So it's not going to be as part of the use it or lose it. It's use it if you want to for your vaccine. It's not going to count against the 40 hours that are already accrued, where most of that is earned leave. This is just given to you so that we can mobilize recipients to go out and get the vaccine and get back to work.
All right. Very good. That's the only question I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Settlemeyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman, I was just kind of curious, I like the idea, I appreciate it. I myself, if we would have looked at the concept of the rollout of the vaccine, I would have followed the same trajectory that we shut everybody down. So healthcare workers, individuals that were working in stores, retail should have been ahead of other individuals and businesses that we deemed to be non-essential and we allowed to be closed. So I appreciate your frustration with the rollout. I was extremely frustrated with it as well and still am. But in that respect, I was curious, what about the concept if an individual organization brings the people in-house to give the shots? Would you be interested in shortening that duration of time? And then I had one other question, if I could, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Settlemeyer. So that was actually one of the conversations that I had with a few business groups. And in the amendment, if you look at the first section on the COVID-19 vaccine changes, subsection E, the provision of the section do not apply to an employer who provides an on-premises vaccination clinic available to employees. The employee shall be able to receive the vaccine from the on-premises clinic during their paid work hours. So that was exactly some of the concerns that we had, either for hospitals or casinos that are opening their own vaccine clinics. So as long as my worry is just making sure that employees get paid while they're getting their vaccine on premise, and that's something that's covered as part of the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman. I greatly appreciate that. The other thing is I think this is a great idea necessarily. So why shouldn't we have the state do it? Shouldn't we worry about our state workers and make sure that they're taken care of too? So would you mind an amendment to make sure that it applies to everybody, not just private?
Thank you, Senator Settlemeyer. And for the record, this is Fabian Donate. I would welcome that amendment for all employees. Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Vice Chair Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Senator Donate. I thought it was a great presentation. I just had a couple of questions. So with this expansion, so currently what I understand how it works at the federal level is the businesses receive tax credits if their 500 employees are under dollar for dollar. So this wouldn't cause any issues, or would this be try to continue that tax credit at the state level?
Thank you, Senator Neal, Vice Chair Neal. I would have to get clarification just on the tax credit part. I don't want to answer anything incorrect for you, but that's something that I can definitely follow up.
Yeah, I was just super curious because I mean, the great thing about the paid leave expansion was it gave dollar for dollar tax credit to businesses so that they really weren't out of pocket to expand paid leave for COVID. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Donate, you wish to respond or?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Senator Scheibel.
Thank you. And this was a great presentation. I just wanted a little bit of clarification on the proposed amendment because looking at the part that's titled COVID-19 vaccine leave changes, it starts with the number 1, and I'm trying to understand if I look at the original bill, where that language would fit in. Is it replacing the blue language that's currently on page 3? Is this being added at the end of the statute? How do we read these two together?
Thank you, Senator Scheibel. Fabian Donate for the record. Yeah, so when the bill came out, it didn't really do much. It just changed the requirements for where you can use your paid leave. It didn't allocate anything outside of what has already been established by regulation. So it would be aside from, I think it would go after the provisions. And also, as you notice that towards the end of the bill that's on Nellis, the original intent of my study was to look at the long-term implications of casino and frontline workers, including those who might not have access to some of the same luxuries afforded to if you're represented by a union. But that has taken shape after speaking with the business lobby and a few of a lot of the community grassroots groups and also with local health districts of how we can pretty much move forward so that we can address some of the concerns that we've learned from this pandemic and come back in the next session enacting legislation that supports this never happening again. So it's in correlation with the bill that's being proposed on Nellis.
Thanks. And if I could have a brief follow-up, Chair Spearman. One of the reasons I was asking was that I wanted to understand whether this was intended to apply only to employers with 50 or more employees, or if there was a different number, or if it applied to people working for themselves.
Thank you, Senator Scheibel. Fabian Donate for the record. Yeah, well, the amendment as it stands right now is it follows, again, the same template from the bill that was passed in 2019. So it does only affect to employers who have 50 or more employees.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Settlemyer, did I see your hand up or was it up from the last time?
It was up from last time, sorry.
Okay, no problem. Senator Hardy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was looking at your proposed amendment and it alludes to regulations after the effective date of immediately upon passage. The regulations usually take a period of time, so I don't think you mean that we're going to wait for regulations to allow it to take effect. Is that correct?
Thank you, Senator Hardy. If I'm understanding your question correctly, my intent of making this bill effective immediately once it passes both houses and signed by the governor is that we can implement this change quickly. We have already received news that vaccine rollout is going to be effective for people who are 16 and over fairly soon, perhaps by early April. So the faster that we can enact this legislation upon approval, then that will be a really good thing that can affect a lot of people. And then beyond that, it'll expire between 2 years after the regulations are adopted. Presumably at that point in time, many people will get their COVID-19 vaccine. So that was the intention of it. And if we need to make any changes beyond this, we can come back in the next legislative session and address a lot of the concerns that we saw.
So you're actually not proposing the regulatory process. You're proposing that it will be effective, period, not go through the regulatory process.
Thank you, Senator Hardy. I would have to get clarification as to what the process is of implementing this bill, and I can follow up with you on that.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Lang?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Donate, I'm wondering, I know the Pfizer is working on a third vaccine for the new strand, and I'm just wondering if this legislation would also provide leave for people that would get that third vaccine.
Thank you, Senator Lang. I believe in part of my proposed amendment, it includes the wording that employees may be absent from themselves to receive any vaccine related to SARS-CoV-2 and any variant thereof. So that language was inserted for if there are any vaccines that are developed beyond this for COVID-19 variant, that it'll be covered as part of this legislation.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Senator Settlemyre?
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. It sparked a question, though. Again, this would only be the concept of a total of 4 hours in total for the concept and 2-hour block to go out and get the vaccine. If we come up with a new variant and get another vaccine, is that an additional 4 hours if they have to get a second type of COVID shot? And then also, Chairman, if I could ask you, from the concept of saying the bill expires 2 years after, would you have any discussion or entertainment of the idea of saying that it ends when the governor ends the state of emergency someday, or something of that nature, or a year after that time frame? You know, because theoretically, if we hit a certain point, a lot of people will have already gotten it. I was just wondering your thoughts on that, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Settlemyre. The way that, even not for the record, the way that this is written, it only allows you to get 4 hours for a COVID-19 vaccine, nothing beyond that, because then we start getting into the, as you mentioned, the limitations of if another vaccine comes out for the variant, like how that affects it. So the way that's written right now, 4 hours, that's it, with the ability to have 2 hour segments each time. The only thing that I would mention about the idea of this expiring once the governor's declaration is over is that I fear that even if the governor's declaration of emergency is over, that we will run into a situation where a lot of families still will not have access to receive the vaccine at that point in time. And this might become a situation where we see a lot of outbreaks, small spurts of outbreaks happening beyond the declaration of emergency. So if we can get more people mobilized to use this advantage beyond that time frame, that would be something I prefer. And regardless, it still expires after 2 years. So after 2 years, if we see that we have done a poor job at getting people vaccinated, then we can extend that. So that has been my main inclination, but I would be more than welcome to work with you on an amendment that can probably address both concerns.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. Considering the fact that we'll be back in session in 2 years. Well, I won't, so you'll be lucky I'll be gone. But in that respect, in 2 years, people can once again bring this back. It probably makes some sense to, think about 2 years if for some reason, the emergency does not end by then. Sadly, some states have determined that by remaining in a state of emergency, it allows us to access more FEMA funds. And unfortunately, some states are going to keep us in an emergency just to keep a larger percentage of those funds. And that's problematic to me. But thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that answer.
Additional questions? So, Senator, I just have a couple of questions. First of all, thank you for bringing this legislation, because this is one of those viruses that not only do we not know a lot about, we don't know what the after effects are, because it affects people differently in different ways, and then different lengths of time for recovery. So thank you for that. I just have a question because, and I may have missed it. Is there anything in there for employees who have been laid off or will be laid off in terms of getting information as to how they might participate in this?
Thank you, Chair Spearman, for that question. Senator Donati, for the record, I did not cover that as part of the proposed amendment. There was a question as to if this policy can be retroactive, as in like, do we cover people who have already received the vaccine, or even the concern of what happens if someone already used their paid leave hours to get the vaccine? That makes the bill a little bit more complex as to getting it passed through. So that's why that was my reasoning for not including it. But if that is something that you'd like to see in the proposed amendment before it gets finalized, I'd be glad to include that.
Yeah, I'm referring basically to the communication method. Some people, if they're working, they will have access to that information, but if they're not, if they've been laid off, then they won't. And also, will it include like a negative response? It's very small. The percentage is very small, but there have been some people for whom it's not been a positive experience. They've had a negative response. So is there anything in the bill that would include some types of accommodations for them?
Thank you, Chair Spearman. Senator Donati, for the record. If my understanding, your question is more inclined towards the symptoms that may persist beyond the vaccine and how that takes some individuals the chance to recuperate. This bill does not cover that. That is a need that needs to be addressed. As you have already accounted, everyone experiences the vaccine differently based on how your immune response acts. So, but as far as I'm aware, that's not included as part of this legislation.
Thank you. Just my opinion, but you may look at and see what could be covered by the governor's original emergency order, because the more we learn about this vaccine, the more it looks like those who advised him to issue that emergency order makes him, we think he's a genius, because if we did not have that, there would be, I'm sure, more than 300,000 Nevadans who have been infected, and probably far more, unfortunately, who would have died. So you may check the emergency order and see if there's any leeway in there that you might be able to apply some of the, some of the steps in this, and especially in the amendment. Okay. Vice Chair Neal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to mention, Senator Donati, if you do consider an amendment that is retroactive going back, I think it would be probably wise to try to tie language to the expiration of the tax credit, right? So if you have businesses who are going to object, it would make sense. So if they're currently getting paid for the leave that they're being given by federal reimbursement, right, from the tax credit, which expires September 30th, 2021, then it would make sense to tie it to that. The language hasn't come out on the American Rescue Plan, which was the most recent iteration of COVID relief. And so it's not clear on how far that expands, but at least if there is an expansion and you go retroactive and these workers had not been covered, at least the business may have the business case to do that reimbursable tax credit, dollar for dollar for paid leave around COVID. In the actual IRS language, it does give a kind of blanket, I would say it says if the employee is experiencing any other substantially similar condition as specified by Department of HHS. So that little subgroup is pretty broad and it's not clear exactly, but it seems to be umbrella language that sucks in other. I would explore that, right? And I would think through how that would work if you did a retroactivity provision, trying to tie it to some reimbursable mechanism. Those are just my 2 cents when you said you would put that in.
Thank you, Vice Chair Neal. Senator Donati, for the record. Yeah, I would be more than welcome to work with you on that and that's something that I would be glad to entertain. Thank you.
Vice Chair Neal, additional questions?
No, sorry. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
I'm so tired.
I see Senator Hardy's hand. Senator Hardy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the retroactive problems would be if the business doesn't exist anymore, or is bankrupt or whatever. So I think the retroactive is problematic in many cases. Thank you.
Senator Donate, response? No? Yes? No? Okay. All right, I don't see any hands from the committee, so we will now move to public comment on this bill. We will do 20 minutes for 3 minutes for each individual. And remember, if someone has already covered your points, please say ditto. That allows us more time for more people to get on in the allotted time, okay? Thank you so much. So broadcast, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair. To speak in testimony in support of SB 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to testify in support of SB 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 018, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Jim Sullivan, JIMSULLIVAM, and I'm representing the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. We support SB 209 because it expands the types of activities and reasons for an employee to request paid time off. Including time off for vaccinations is a crucial change that will create a more safe and healthy workplace and get hospitality workers back on the job. In addition, requiring the Legislative Committee on Healthcare to conduct a study regarding the long-term health implications of COVID-19 on casino and frontline workers is necessary at a time when the long-term effects of COVID are still unknown. This study would allow our union to identify the future healthcare needs of the hundreds of culinary union members who have contracted COVID-19. The Culinary Union urges you to support and pass SB 209. Thank you.
We are currently taking testimony in support of SB 209. To testify in support, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 079, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, committee. For the record, my name is Joelle Gutman Dodson, JoelleGutman-Dodson, calling today from the Washoe County Health District in support of SB 09. We're very supportive and happy the Senator brought this legislation forward and would love to help in any way we can with future amendments. Thank you.
To testify in support of SB 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Okay, we'll move now to those in opposition.
To testify in opposition of SB 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in opposition, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, so we'll move to those testifying neutral.
To testify neutral on Bill SB 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 124, Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Good morning, Good morning, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. For the record, Paul Moradkin, Moradkhan with the Vegas Chamber. The Chamber is neutral to both the introduced version and the amendment proposed by the bill sponsor. I want to thank the bill sponsor for meeting with the Chamber about the bill, and those conversations have been productive. We appreciate the bill sponsor's help in clarifying some of the intent of the bill and the logistical components. I do want to quickly comment about the retro concept, especially with Nevada already issuing over 1 million vaccines throughout our state. The logistical recollection would be overwhelming for employers, but we all do support goals that encourage all Nevadans to get vaccinated. As many of you know, the Vegas Chamber, its fellow chambers of commerce and trade partners have worked diligently in supporting statewide and local COVID mitigation efforts over the last year. We have distributed tens of thousands of masks to frontline workers and employees, over 50,000 posters on social distancing guidelines for the workplace, and spending millions of dollars on PPE for employees. We are now aggressively pushing vaccine efforts with employers and employees as employee groups become eligible through the state plan. We are seeing employers educating employees about the benefits of getting the vaccine, debunking vaccine myths, arranging on-site vaccine clinics, and greater flexibility with scheduling for their employees. Again, I'd like to thank the bill sponsor for his collaboration with the Vegas Chamber. Thank you, Chair Spearman and members of the committee.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 139. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair Spearman and committee members. This is Misty Grimmer with the Ferraro Group representing the Nevada Resort Association, and we are neutral on SB 209 with the amendments that have been presented today by Senator Doñate. And I definitely want to echo Mr. Moradkin's comments to thank the Senator for the way that he has been willing to sit down with us and listen to our concerns and make some changes to the bill to make the bill more palatable for the resort industry. Nobody in the state wants to get the state rolling again and get our workers back to work more than the casino industry does. We realize that the casino industry is one of the major lifebloods of the state of Nevada. And so all along we have done everything that we can to help make this process, to make the pandemic as least painful as possible. Throughout the pandemic, the casinos and resorts have extended benefits and tried to help out their employees even after the shutdown. We delayed layoffs and furloughs as long as we could. And then even after the layoffs and furloughs, health benefits were extended beyond that. So we have tried to be good partners to our employees throughout this throughout the pandemic. As I mentioned, we are neutral on the bill the way it's drafted right now. We would have some concerns if the bill was amended to include retroactivity of this benefit. At this point, there's really no way to track that or to know how it was used, and so making that benefit retro would be a problem. Several of our properties already they have on-site clinics and additional clinics are going to be opened up. So we do also appreciate Senator Doñate making that addition to the bill, that if there is an on-site clinic, then the person can get the vaccination there. So again, thank you, committee, and thank you, Senator, for working with us on this. And we look forward to seeing how the language comes out when it's drafted and to continue to work with you and the Senator on this bill. Thank you very much.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 114. Please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Greetings, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. My name is Amber Stidham. That's AMBER STIDHAM. and I'm here on behalf of the Henderson Chamber of Commerce. We too would like to thank the sponsor for bringing this bill forward. Certainly addressing issues surrounding the pandemic continue to evolve even now, a year later. We do echo the same comments as shared by the Vegas Chamber, and we too are committed to the ongoing encouragement for statewide vaccination efforts to get our economy back on track. Our chamber does appreciate the consideration for the smallest of our employers in looking over this recently posted proposal. We were concerned about their ability to accommodate vaccine access for their employees, which I know is important to them, but also while ensuring it doesn't negatively impact their business. So thank you. We would also, similarly to the Vegas Chamber, be worried about any potential retroactivity conversations and how it could impact some of these businesses. And we'll continue to read through this new proposal. And we really thank you for the opportunity to provide our comments to the committee. Thank you.
If you recently just joined us, we are currently neutral on SB 209. To testify neutral on SB 209, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no more callers neutral at this time.
Thank you. Thank you. I think Ms. Grimmer brought up what I was trying to say is that people who've been laid off and have limited access to some of the information that that those who are still working may have. If nothing else, what this pandemic has shown us is that we've gotten a new name for who we used to call hourly workers because of the pandemic. Now we know that they are essential workers. And so those are, I guess, the ones for whom the bill is written. Senator Donyate, do you have any closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair Spearman, and to the committee members and those who called in to testify on this bill. My final remarks is that I hope that we can have a deeper conversation on how we can move the needle to supporting public health. Before I finish, I just want to share with you a quick note from a local Las Vegas resident, Yesenia Rebolledo, and she mentioned to me the following. Como trabajadora, mi primera prioridad es el bienestar de mi familia. No puedo permitirme perder tiempo de trabajo. No puedo arriesgar mi bienestar y el de los que me preocupan, pero no tengo otra opción. Así que si no nos dan esto, podríamos asegurar un primer paso para priorizar mejor la salud de los empleados y de la empresa. As a working mother, my first priority is the well-being of my family. I cannot afford to miss time from work. I cannot risk the well-being of myself and those I care for. Yet I have no other choice. I know if we are given this, we could ensure a first step to better prioritize the health of the employees and business. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you have survived Vice Chair Neal and Senator Pickard. So there's a certificate waiting for you in my office. Thank you so much. It's a great bill. And look forward to working more with you on that. And so with that, I will close the committee hearing on Senate Bill 209, and we will now open the hearing on Senate Bill 231, revises provisions related to financial services. I believe it's Senator Keykefer. Are you here?
I am here. Thank you very much.
Okay, so please proceed when you are ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Ben Keykefer. I represent Senate District 16, which I think we're all sitting in. So I appreciate the time today. I'm here to present Senate Bill 231, which is another step forward in recognizing the changes that have been made to some of our consumer practices, not just as a result of COVID-19, but as we have evolved in how we process our daily lives, and that's been happening over quite a period of time. Back last session, we changed our installment loan chapter to recognize internet business lenders as a definition under 675-020, and then allowed those really B2B loans to be conducted by entities that do not have a physical presence in the state. This bill expands that change to create a new definition for internet consumer lender. And this would be an entity that makes consumer loans exclusively through the internet. And this would allow these entities to also provide services in the state of Nevada without having a physical location in our state. It would still require that they make available to the Commissioner of Financial Institutions Division any of their documents that are needed. And you see that in subsection 4, section 2 of the bill. But ultimately, it reflects the fact that a lot of consumer financing happens on the internet. And you see that when you go buy mostly sort of medium to large ticket items. And we'll be hearing in a second from the company called Affirm, which is who brought this bill to me after I worked with them a little bit in the interim to get them functional in the state. And these are, so when you go on a website to purchase an item and you see an offer to allow you to make sort of installment loans over a fixed period of time, sometimes with little to no interest, then these are companies that are operating right now in our state. They've set up an office. Affirm, for example, went through the process to become established and has set up the office in the state, and to date has not had a single consumer walk into their office to ask them any questions. So if the purpose of the physical location is primarily to offer consumers a place to go, I don't think that that's how this is playing out for these types of lending mechanisms, and it may make more sense to recognize that reality and allow them to function without a physical presence in the state. So I would, at this point, turn it over to Scott Estrada. He's the Director of Government Relations, Public Policy, and Social Impact for Affirm, and he can talk a little bit more about their business model, what they do, and why he thinks this is appropriate.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Scott Estrada, Director of Government Relations, Public Policy, and Social Impact for Affirm, which today operates across the U.S. and Canada. Previously, I was the Director of Federal Advocacy at the Center for Responsible Lending, and before that, I was an Economic Policy Advisor for the United States Senate. Affirm is a technology platform that helps facilitate honest and transparent financing products to consumers through our over 6,000 national merchant partners, including Wayfair, Peloton, Walmart, Target, and as well to over 1,300 small businesses in Nevada. To date, we have helped Nevada consumers finance close to $160 million in loan volume, financing these purchases without ever charging a single penny in late fees, nor any deferred interest payments. Affirm has been in business for over the last 9 years. Senate Bill 231 would enable internet consumer lenders to do business in Nevada without having to maintain a physical location. As Senator Kiefer noted, Affirm Loan Services is fully licensed in Nevada and does maintain a location, but has never had a single customer walk into the location. Our model is strictly internet and app-based, so if a Nevada consumer had an issue, they would do what any number of our million of customers do and call, email, or web chat through our website. We maintain a best-in-class customer service operation based in Pittsburgh, which has helped Affirm maintain a Net Promoter Score of over 80 over the last 9 years. A Nevada licensed internet consumer lender would still be required to attain licensure from the Nevada Financial Institutions Division in order to do business in the state. The FID can choose to audit Affirm or any other company anytime at their headquarters at the lending company, and the lending company would pay for all expenses associated with any on-site examination. Additionally, we have worked with Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada on a proposed amendment for further consumer protections. I believe Peter Aldis from LACSN is present and can answer any questions you may have. In conclusion, SB 231 removes a somewhat cumbersome provision and would bring more internet-based businesses to Nevada, enhance the economy by providing consumer choice, all the while keeping bad actors from the lending industry. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Hey, Madam Chair, I think the final person that I have logged in to testify in support of the bill is Peter Aldis.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, my name is Peter Aldis. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada, and I focus on protecting Nevadans from predatory loans. The proposed amendment that a firm has worked with me on ensures that regardless of the language in a contract, if a internet consumer lender, the law that applies to a loan from an internet consumer lender is going to be Nevada law with all of the consumer protections that go along with it, rather than whatever law goes along with the internet consumer's headquarters. And then there's also a provision regarding the jurisdiction and venue of any lawsuits that arise out of these loans, whether the borrower is getting sued by the lender or whether the lender is suing, the borrower is suing the lender. The lawsuit needs to happen in Nevada rather than in some foreign state. I'm happy to answer any questions about the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had neglected to mention the amendment that was submitted. I apologize. That was friendly. That was in consultation with me, and I think it does exactly what Mr. Aldis suggested that it would do, and defer to Nevada's laws and protect Nevada consumers. So I certainly appreciate that. I think that's really all I've got, Madam Chair. I think that before you is a bill that reflects the reality of current consumer spending and consumer activity. And as things change, our laws should change with them. And I think this is an example of one that makes sense. So I'll leave it at that and open it up for any questions you might have.
Thank you. I think I saw Vice Chair Neal and then Senator Pickard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just wanted to speak to the amendment really quick because when I was reading the amendment, it was like any loan. So I had two questions. Number one, I'm hoping that this amendment is going to be a little bit more specific to say, if there's an insertion of a forum selection clause, first of all, it shouldn't be in the contract if it's all going to be Nevada-based jurisdiction, but at least speaking to a forum selection clause, which could be in a contract, which would then give a person who doesn't know an option to then select to have jurisdiction somewhere else. Those are really common in contracts where the choice of law provision and you just click the box and don't know that those are actually prohibited. So I would want that kind of language in that amendment. And then I was wondering in terms of like the lawsuit where it said, I'm assuming there's going to be a lawsuit. So let me step back. When it said any loan, so it'd be any loan. I was just wondering about the sourcing, right? So let's say a person, the company, even though they have an internet presence, I've been running into this issue where it does matter because if the loan transaction happens and a person is a Nevada resident, but yet they were in Minnesota when they did it, what then is the sourcing attached to this transaction? Like, how is it sourced back? And so let me give you a clear example. I'm in Minnesota, I got stranded, I get online, I do my loan, my ID is in Nevada. Talk to me about the reality of the implementation of the law.
I'll have to, Madam Chair, Ben Keycover for the record, I'll have to defer to Mr. Estrada and Mr. Aldis to answer those questions for the senator.
Thank you for the question. For the record, Scott Estrada, through you, Chair Spearman, to Vice Chair Neal. I will confirm this with our legal counsel, but my understanding is that the source of the loan is where you are resident, your state residency, and that would be the law that applied no matter where you might have actually downloaded the app or applied for it in another state. The state is based on your current resident status in terms of the forum. So I will verify that with our legal counsel, but that is my understanding.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. I would appreciate that because typically, like and I brought this up in another hearing, when you have choice of law provisions, the contract is typically the place. So when you enter into a contract in a place, typically jurisdiction ties to that place of where the contract is in order to determine the injury. And so that's why I was getting at that amendment, because that amendment needs to be way stronger and have a lot more language that really supports this kind of activity and being super, super clear. And Madam Chair, that's all I have to ask.
Thank you. Senator Pickard?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as usual, Senator Neal is on the ball. She just took one of my questions, so I just have two left. How does, Senator Keycover, how does this change the status quo? Because I know there are lots of internet lenders. I mean, Rocket Mortgage comes to mind, and they're able to issue loans here in Nevada. How does this change the status quo?
Thank you, Ben Keycover, for the record, Madam Chair, through to Senator Pickard. So I can't speak specifically to mortgage lending, and again, not my subject matter. Right? These are consumer loans that are pushed through websites when you purchase at a specific place. So, for example, a firm itself finances, Peloton, Pottery Barn, a bunch of whatever store it might be, right? So it's while you process your purchase directly through that consumer-facing website. It allows you to finance over a fixed term with fixed amounts. So right now, in order for a company like a firm to function in Nevada, they do have to have a physical presence and a physical office in the state. And this would allow them to basically do what they're doing now, but without that physical office. They did set up, when they entered the market, a physical office in the state. We required them to do that. And I think from my understanding, the main purpose of that is to give consumers a place to go if they have an issue, while also maintaining records that can be used by the Financial Institutions Division to inspect if necessary. So we try to protect the second of those intents by requiring the company to either provide documentation as necessary or fund the cost of an FID officer to or inspector to travel to their office. But the previous intent of having an office for consumers to go to just seems to be unutilized in this specific marketplace. And as I indicated, a firm opened their office according to the law as it currently exists, and they've had not a single consumer walk through the door to chat with them at that time. So and basically this would allow them to function with their business model being truly internet-based rather than a model that was designed to have bricks and mortar on the ground in Nevada.
All right, I appreciate that. And you kind of touched on my next question, which was something that Mr. Estrada mentioned, and that's we're doing audits in the headquarters rather than requiring them to come to Nevada. I'm assuming that that's the source of the fiscal note, because now we're going to have people chasing lenders. That is, we're going to have our inspectors chasing lenders all over the country doing audits, and so taking presumably an audit team unless they hire a CPA, a local CPA to assist. So we're going to be requiring do I understand correctly that we're going to be requiring the Department of Business and Industry to send their auditors to parts far flung in order to do these audits?
Thank you, Ben Keycover, for the record. This is so I think if you look at Section 2, subsection 4, it allows for those books to be delivered to the state or have investigators travel to the out-of-state HQ, at which point the company would be required for all costs associated with that investigation. I believe that If you ask the FID, they'll probably indicate that the fiscal note may be more affiliated with a influx of applications and the requirement to process applications in this space. I believe Ms. O'Loughlin is on the phone line, if not signed in through the Zoom. And Madam Chair, I think that you might be able to direct more questions specifically to her if she can get through on the phone.
Is she here? I'm looking for a name or call in. No? Yes?
Madam Chair, I believe Ms. O'Loughlin is on the phone line.
Okay. Please proceed.
PPS, are we able to get Ms. O'Loughlin on the phone line?
Thank you, Chair. Please stand by. Caller with the last name of Laughlin, if you could please unmute yourself by pressing *6. Please stand by one more moment. Ms. Laughlin, if you could please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Thank you, Ms. Laughlin. Please press *6 now to unmute yourself. Please proceed.
Good morning, Chair. This is Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairwoman. This is Senator Kekeffer. I believe Senator Pickard had a question that was probably more appropriately directed to you. So if you hadn't heard it, perhaps you can
Do I need to repeat the question? I guess.
Good morning.
Good morning. All right. The question was, as we're dealing with audits, there's a requirement for audits or in the amendment or Mr. I forget who, was it? No, it wasn't Mr. Aldis. It was Mr. Estrada mentioned that we were going to be auditing at the place of the headquarters of the lender. And Senator Kekeffer mentioned that investigations, and I don't know if there's a difference. Are we, because often we do audits even though we're not investigating a complaint. But the expectation would be that we would be sending members of our or auditors from our Department of Business and Industry to do the audit at the location, wherever that was in the United States. Is that the expectation? I would imagine that the books being sent to Nevada might not be sufficient. What's going to happen when we're trying to audit, whether that's just an audit for fact checking or an examination after a complaint? How does that work?
Thank you for the question, Senator Pickard. Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. We anticipate being able to do all the exams from Las Vegas. If there is a reason for us to have to go out of state, we certainly can do that, and we would expect that the the licensee would pay for that. But our annual examination should be done right here in Las Vegas.
All right, so we're not limiting that just to investigations of complaints, but we're also talking about an annual audit. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sandy O'Loughlin for the record.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, that's all I had, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Senator Lang.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senator Keffer, will this business have a business license in Nevada?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ben Keffer for the record, through you to Senator Lang. I believe that any business conducting business in the state is required to have a state business license, and Ms. O'Loughlin might be able to state whether that is a specific requirement of licensing under her office, but I believe it is.
Yes, Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. Thank you, Senator Lang. All licensees that lend in Nevada will have to be licensed through the Financial Institutions Division.
And so, thank you. And so, because the headquarters are out of state, will they be paying all associated taxes to the state? Because they're not going to have a physical presence. It'll just be on the internet. Would they be paying all associated taxes and such to Nevada, or would they be paying it to the state where their headquarters are?
This is Ben Keffer for the record. So if the taxes that they would be paying now, if they have a single office with one person in it, would be de minimis probably. If they may not, they likely wouldn't meet even the MBT threshold, I would think. But if they're generating revenue above the commerce tax threshold based on transactions conducted within the state, they would certainly have liability for that. So I think that would probably be the best example. There would obviously, if they don't have employees in the state, there would be no MBT liability. Trying to think of what else may exist, but I'm blanking on other examples right now. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Vice Chair Neal, you have a question?
It's just really quick. I wanted to ask a firm, do you guys have a debt collection arm, or is it all in-house? I'm asking the question because I'm wondering if the debt collection, the same rules would apply if you have an extension for debt collection in terms of venue and jurisdiction.
Thank you for the question. For the record, Scott Estrada, through you, Chair Spearman, to Vice Chair Neal. Again, I can confirm with our legal counsel. My understanding is that we don't have the debt collection we're done is just if the loan goes into default, we simply charge it off, and the subsequent assignees of that contract, would have to defer to FID, who's more familiar with Nevada debt collection law on how that functions. But I can certainly touch base with our legal counsel to get that specific answer for you.
Thank you for that. I just want to make sure that as the amendment goes through, that since we're adopting internet lenders, that the assignees are also attached to this limited jurisdiction where all lawsuits are held in Nevada, even if it's assigned as a debt for an internet installment lender. And that's it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Ben Keffer for the record. I think Senator Neal raises an important point. And while a firm may very well not as a business practice, not assign debt to collection agencies or anything like that. They're one piece of a larger industry. So I think she brings up a really important point for consumer protection.
So, you want to finish your sentence? Key cover?
I must have, I did, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Great.
Righty. Any additional questions, committee members? Okay, I don't see any hands. So broadcast, let's go to the phones, and we will have 20 minutes for those who are in support. 3 minutes per person, and remember, ditto is an accepted response.
Thank you, Chair. To testify in support of SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in support of SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in support at this time.
Okay, so we will go to those in opposition. 20
To
minutes.
testify in, oh, I'm sorry, Chair. To testify in opposition of SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Okay, we will go now to those testifying neutral.
To testify neutral on SB 231, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers neutral at this time.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, you don't have a question, comment? Senator Keycover, I just have one. I believe it may be germane. Many times when someone fills out a loan for a mortgage, a car, whatever, there's a demographic space at the bottom where you put in, what your ethnicity, gender, and that sort of thing. Does a firm have anything like that on their excuse me, on their applications?
Madam Chair, Ben Keycover, for the record, I'd have to defer to Mr. Estrada on that question. I have not actually bought anything through a firm. Apologies.
Thank you for the question, Chair Spearman. No, for consumer lending in full compliance with fair lending laws, we are prohibited and do not collect racial or ethnic data for our borrowers on the front end.
Okay, thank you. Committee members, Senator Keycover, you must be living right. No,
I just try to make it in your committee, Madam Chair. So,
okay.
I appreciate the time. Thank you very much. And I'll make sure that Mr. Estrada gets back to Senator Neal to confirm.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. And so with that, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 231 and open it on Senate Bill 245. That's Senator Lang, Mr. Sotero, lines of theatrical. Hi there, Randy. How are you? Haven't seen you in a minute.
I'm well, Chairwoman. It's good to see you as well.
Okay, thank you. Senator Lang, you want to begin when you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Spearman, members of the committee. I'm Roberta Lang, representing Senate District 7 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 245, a bill that seeks to provide recourse for individuals who are owed wages or compensation by our former employer. I am pleased to be joined by Randy Saltero, representing the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, who will assist with the presentation of Senate Bill 245, and the Nevada Labor Commissioner, Shannon Chambers, who will address a friendly amendment which has been provided on Nellis. According to Prosperity Now, almost 52% of Nevada households do not have sufficient savings to cover basic expenses for 3 months if they experience a sudden job loss, a medical emergency, or another financial crisis leading to the loss of income. Unfortunately, this means that when our residents lose a job, sometimes at no fault of their own, they do not have the ability to wait very long until their next paycheck. I'd like to read a letter from Joseph, I'll probably mess up his last name, but Jackiap. Sorry, Randy. He is a technical director and stage manager. He works for various production companies in Las Vegas. He worked for ASHP show in the fall of 2019 for 3,000 attendees here in town. His job involves seeing the execution of everyone's job in a friendly and timely manner for the success of the show. This particular show went off perfectly. All elements of the production, the sound, the lights, the staging, etc., went normally as the audience went home educated and entertained, and the client was satisfied. However, the contract of my coworkers and I were working under at the time had expired, and a new agreement was being negotiated. My coworkers and I dealt with the consequence of no paychecks for weeks. When we were finally paid at the leisure of our employer, there were no late fees or penalties included. With this new legislation, I believe working people like myself will have the added layer of protection if the employer fails to pay in a timely manner. Currently, when an employee is fired or terminated, the employee's final unpaid wages must be paid immediately upon termination. If an employee quits or resigns, the former employer has to make a final payment available within 7 days or by the next scheduled pay period, or payday, whichever is earlier. Employers who miss the deadline owe their former employees wages for each day they go without their final paycheck until it is paid in full, or for up to 30 days. Senate Bill 245 provides former employees who are owed their final paycheck a remedy to obtain these unpaid wages. Chair Spearman, before we discuss the provisions of the bill, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Mr. Soltero if he needs to discuss and provide any recourse, discuss why we need to provide a recourse for people. Randy, do you have anything you'd like to add at this time, or shall I proceed?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, through you, Senator, through you, Chair, through to the committee. My name is Randy Soltero. My input would be simply that when this problem was identified and there was problems that folks weren't getting paid on time, and everybody needs their paycheck, is bottom line. So I could tell you, we went to the labor commissioner, and she is here with us today. I could tell you that the bill was, she has an amendment that we are satisfied with. We've been working with her, and really to ask her, what are the tools you need in your tool chest to make the law more effective and to get people paid correctly on time. Sometimes there's folks that work under a collective bargaining agreement, and that those collective bargaining agreements may or may not have provisions in them or a remedy for late pay. And so this amendment that the Labor Commissioner will go through, I think the best course is for her to go next because this is really the base of the bill. Section 2, the amendment in Section 2 of the proposed language will be struck, and the Labor Commissioner's piece will be inserted into this bill, and that piece is uploaded on Nellis at this time. So if I may, Senator Lang asked that Shannon Chambers, Nevada State Labor Commissioner, go next, talked about her amendment and basically the language that will be adopted to make this go forward. I also like to point out that Mr. Jakulek is on Nellis and here. Thank you for talking about his amendment. I'm not sure if you want to ask him any questions. I know he's here and available to answer any questions someone this has happened to. So that's why we've asked him to be here. But with that, Senator Lang, I'll turn it back over to you. You direct back to Labor Commissioner Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Soltero. Just like to go through the sections of the bill. So section 1 of the bill expands the definition of wages to include the amounts due to a discharged employee or to an employee who resigns or quits. The amendment that we have accepted from Shannon Chambers, the Labor Commissioner, removes section 2 of the bill, and then as written, Senate Bill 245 becomes effective October 1st. I'm also proposing a conceptual amendment to make that provision of Senate Bill 245 effective on July 1st, 2021. So Shannon Chambers, if you'd like to go ahead and talk about your conceptual amendment, and then if I could do closing remarks, that would be great.
So good morning, Chairwoman Spearman, members of the committee, Madam Vice Chair Neal. This is Shannon Chambers, Nevada Labor Commissioner, here to speak about the proposed friendly amendment on Senate Bill 245. So I did have the opportunity to speak with Senator Lang and Mr. Soltero about what they were trying to address in the original bill and the original language in Senate Bill 245. And in my conversations with them, I informed them that the proposed language in section 2, that the Labor Commissioner already had that authority. So as I understood the issue more clearly was that we were dealing with employees who were covered by a collective bargaining agreement. And as Senator Lang stated in her testimony, that this particular employee, and it sounds like other employees, were kind of caught in between when the old agreement was in place and when the new agreement was being negotiated. So it has always been the position of the Labor Commissioner that when there is a collective bargaining agreement, that the employee must go through that process first. So they must exhaust all those remedies and relief under the collective bargaining agreement before the Labor Commissioner will take a look at the issue, take a look at the claim, and take jurisdiction of the matter. So I want to make it clear that this proposed amendment is not going to change anything there. I will tell you that in the past year, just with everything that's gone on with the COVID-19 public health emergency, and then with all the legislation that was passed in 2019, the Labor Commissioner has seen an increase in claims and complaints being brought to the Labor Commissioner by employees who may or may not be covered under a collective bargaining agreement. So what this proposed amendment is going to do is to specifically set forth in the law that an employee does have to go through the administrative process under their collective bargaining agreement. If that process is inadequate, unavailable, or non-binding, then a claim or complaint could be filed with the Labor Commissioner, and the Labor Commissioner could determine if the collective bargaining agreement or the union was following labor laws, and then obviously make a determination and a finding on that, which would then go through the typical process of a determination, objection, and then a potential hearing. So I just want to make clear that we're not doing anything that's not already being done or not authorized by law, but just making it clear that if an employee who is covered by a collective bargaining agreement, if they go through that process and it's inadequate, unavailable, or non-binding, then the Labor Commissioner can take jurisdiction of the claim and again investigate and review it. So that is the intent of the amendment, and I'm happy to answer any questions and go through the language word by word if that's what you want me to do. I also want to make clear that this proposed amendment does not impact any other current rights that an employee has right now under the Nevada labor laws, and does not affect their right to also bring a private action should that employee choose to do that. So again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, go on, Senator Lang. I was just ready to ask you have other questions, other comments.
Sure. And Madam Chair, this concludes our presentation. We thank you for the opportunities to present our bill, Senate Bill 245. I urge you to pass this bill because this, in a time of financial insecurity for so many people, this is really, really important that we get this bill passed, and so that people feel like they'll have a recourse to get the back wages that are owed to them. We are happy to answer any questions that anyone on the committee or yourself might have.
Thank you, Senator Lang. I see Senator Pickard, do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You went dead there for a second. I didn't hear you. Thank you. And thank you, Senator Lang, for bringing this. And this is probably going to be a question for Ms. Chambers because she answered the first question I had, I think, and that is that the Labor Commissioner already has the authority to do what is in Section 2, and that well, under Section 1, it appears to me that subsection 3 is really restating subsection 1 in that NRS 608-040 already applies to any employee that has worked and generated an income. So if it turns out that those wages were not paid within the time set forth in 608-040, that would apply. But when it comes to then in looking at the proposed amendment under sub 2, it says, and you repeated a couple of times the word inadequate. Who determines what's adequate and what's inadequate? Is that strictly up to the Labor Commissioner? Are there clauses in a CBA that might take that away from the Commissioner? I'm thinking if there were an acknowledgement in the CBA that the remedies provided are deemed adequate by the parties, would the Commissioner still be able to go in and say, no, that's not adequate? We're going to set that aside and we're going to take jurisdiction. How does that work?
So, Madam Chairwoman, through you to Senator Pickard, this is again Shannon Chambers, Nevada Labor Commissioner, for the record. So,
Yeah,
Senator
just
Pickard,
go direct.
Okay, thank you. So, if that matter was brought to the Labor Commissioner and the Labor Commissioner reviewed the case and both parties signed something saying that the remedies in the collective bargaining agreement were adequate, obviously those parties could raise that as a defense to any type of investigation that the Labor Commissioner may start. I do believe, in my opinion, that just having the ability to bring something to the Labor Commissioner to review it, and I will tell you, Senator Pickard, in the past year, there have been some collective bargaining agreements and matters that have been brought to me where the parties said their remedies were adequate and the collective bargaining agreement did not comply with the law. So paid leave is one of them. So again, we would go through the process. I would do a review, but to your point, it could certainly be a defense. But again, just having the ability to bring it to the Labor Commissioner, I think is extremely important.
Well, and I agree with that. And that's why I thought that this is couched as a jurisdictional statement. So I mean, we need to make sure the language is clear that it's not that the Commissioner would have the authority to determine whether or not they can take jurisdiction in any case. And so it's just a small technical detail there, but I think it could make a huge difference because it would shift from a defense to a jurisdictional statement that could deprive the Commissioner of the ability to take it. So that was just a concern I had. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Additional questions, committee members? Okay, seeing none, let's go to the phones. Those in support, 20 minutes, 3 minutes per person, and ditto is an accepted response. Broadcast? Broadcast, are you there?
Yes, I am, Chair. Thank you so much. To testify
Okay,
in
yes.
support of SB 245, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 018, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. My name is Jim Sullivan, JIMSULLIVAN, and I'm representing the Culinary Workers Union Local 226. We fully support SB 245. Clarifying and strengthening the existing language that pertains to employees getting paid is a necessary fix that will help all workers. Right now, if a worker isn't paid, the only recourse they have is to hire an attorney or go to small claims court to get the money owed to them. This simply isn't feasible for many workers, and the changes in this bill make it more likely that workers will get money that is owed to them. The Culinary Union urges you to support and pass this bill. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 515, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits of 515, please press *6 now to unmute yourself.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Phil James, PHILJAYNES. I am the president of the International Alliance of Theatrical Stage Employees, Local 720 in Las Vegas. I'm calling in support of Senate Bill 245, including the Labor Commission's amendment. This bill will help working men and women by adding a pathway and remedy to allow employees to get paid in a fair and timely manner. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 292, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Good morning. Rob Benner, ROBBENNER, with the Northern Nevada Building Trades, just calling in support of this bill. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits of 922, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Hello, for the record, my name is Ainsley Archibald, AINSLEE speaking on my own behalf. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I am strongly in favor of workers being paid promptly and fairly for their labor. People shouldn't have to wait or go to court to argue for that. Who has time for that? If you have a job, you should get paid for it. No hoops jumping necessary. I want to echo the sentiments of those who spoke before me and add my support to SB 245 for the record. Thank you.
We are currently in support of SB 245. To testify in support, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no more callers in support at this time.
Thank you. So we'll go to opposition. 20 minutes, 3 minutes per person.
To testify in opposition of 245, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in opposition of Senate Bill 245, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 114, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Greetings, Chair Spearman and members of the committee. This is Amber Stidham. That's AMBER, Stidham, STIDHAM, testifying on behalf of the Henderson Chamber. I really appreciate the senator for bringing this bill forward. Respectfully, as it's written, we are opposed. I think there's just more that we need to look into the bill. Certainly, our chamber encourages all businesses to abide by Nevada law. and to pay owed wages upon employment termination. We also believe that for those employers who are deliberately withholding owed wages, there should be avenues where they can seek remedy and receive their owed wages in a timely manner. It is also our understanding, though, that currently Nevada law already provides private right of action for wage claims under NRS 608. Nevada statute already also explicitly provides that the claimant can seek a labor commissioner determination on owed wages and pursue litigation if needed thereafter. Claimants can also pursue private civil action as another avenue to seek owed wages. Our concern really is over the definition of wages within this bill and what it could entail in determining wages and compensation versus determining unpaid wages, which has a firmer definition. Currently, it's our understanding that wages not paid upon termination or resignation does not have an explicit path for filing a lawsuit, as does unpaid wages. So as a result, we believe that this bill could have the potential to drastically increase the number of civil litigation cases, which could be burdensome to many of our employers. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide our comments.
We are currently in opposition of SB 245. To testify in opposition, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no callers in opposition at this time.
Thanks, so we will go to those testifying neutral.
To testify neutral on SB 245, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits of 116, please slowly spell and state your name for the record. You have 3 minutes and may begin.
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Alexis Motorex, ALEXIS with the Nevada Associated General Contractors representing the commercial and construction industry in Northern Nevada. We were opposed to the bill as introduced, but with the amendment presented by the Labor Commissioner, we've removed our opposition and are neutral on the bill. We appreciate everyone involved in addressing our concerns. Thank you.
To testify neutral on SB 245, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, you have no more callers neutral at this time.
Thank you. Any members, additional questions? Senator Lang, you have any closing remarks?
Thank you so much. I think if you've ever been that person or you've ever known anyone that has worked at a job and performed their duties as they were hired to do, and then couldn't get paid, and it went on and on and on and on, and they still hadn't received their wages, that's what this bill addressed. It helps the people that are in that situation. They've done everything that they were supposed to do, but didn't get their wages, have an avenue to be able to get those wages with the help of the Labor Commissioner. So I ask you, members of the committee, to support Senate Bill 245. Thanks so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to all the presenters. I believe that's the end of our bill presentation for today. So we will go to public comment broadcast.
Thank you, Chair. To speak in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, your public line is open and working, and you have no callers at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you all for a wonderful Monday morning. I think we have done what we came here to do. And so we are dismissed, adjourned until Wednesday. Thank you so much. You all have a great day.